1. The voice that taught us to see ourselves. You know, every so often, a story comes along that reminds us of the power of a single voice to change how an entire generation sees itself. Today, we gather to honor a man who was much more than a face on a television screen. We celebrate the life of William Anthony Brown, known to the world simply as Tony Brown. He was a steady warmth in our living rooms for 40 years, a grounded presence who passed away peacefully at his home in Newport News, Virginia, at the age of 93. Those who worked alongside him often remembered how he possessed an unforgettable ability to make the most complex issues feel personal and urgent. He didn't just report the news, he interpreted it through a lens of cultural pride and intellectual independence. It is a poignant reminder that while we mourn his passing, we must also feel a deep gratitude for the path he cleared for so many. Take a moment today to reach out to someone you love, because it's the stories we share now that become the legacies of tomorrow. 2. From Charleston to the front lines of media. Behind the cameras was a real person whose journey began in the humble streets of Charleston, West Virginia, during a time of deep segregation. Born in 1933, Tony excelled on the track team and found his first spark of joy performing in school plays, a vibrant young soul who refused to let poverty define his horizon. Before he was a pioneer of the airwaves, he served his country in the U.S. Army and dedicated himself to the study of sociology and psychiatric social work. Colleagues from his early days at the Detroit Courier often recalled his sharp eye as a drama critic, a man who understood that storytelling was the heartbeat of a community. He wasn't just building a career, he was building a toolkit for a revolution in Black thinking. He helped organize the 1963 Walk to Freedom with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., proving that his commitment to justice was never just academic, it was lived. He lived a life of purpose. 3. The architect of the National Journal. In 1970, Tony stepped into the role of producer and host for Black Journal, a program that would eventually bear his name and become a weekend ritual for millions. Tony Brown's Journal wasn't just a show, it was a sanctuary where topics like the Tuskegee syphilis experiment and the Tulsa race riot were explored with a rigor the mainstream media often lacked. He was nattily dressed and bespectacled, a warrior journalist who spoke truth to power with a vibrant and uncompromising spirit. Those who sat across from him in the interviewer's chair often remembered his no-nonsense approach to the truth. He famously operated under a motto that became his North Star: no black lies, no white lies, only the truth. Through his syndication efforts and his partnership with Pepsi Cola, he brought Black public affairs into 85 cities across the nation. He showed us that our history was a continuum, not a collection of episodes. He made excellence the expectation. 4. Building bridges and empowering minds. Tony Brown's influence reached far beyond the glowing lights of the television studio and into the hallowed halls of academia. In 1971, he became the founding dean of the Howard University School of Communications, where he established one of the first annual career fairs to ensure young Black professionals had a seat at the table. He later shared his grounded presence with Hampton University, serving as a dean there until 2009. He was a man of diverse interests, a member of Phi Alpha who wasn't afraid to be controversial or move between political boxes if he felt it served the economic self-sufficiency of his people. Whether he was writing books like What Mama Taught Me or directing the film The White Girl to warn against the dangers of addiction, his goal was always the same: empowerment. He taught us that knowledge of ourselves was not optional, it was necessary for survival. He was a keeper of our collective memory. 5. An enduring legacy of truth. As we look back on his 93 years, we find a beautiful meaning in the loss, a reminder that love for one's community can help us navigate even the hardest battles. Tony Brown's journey ended due to complications from heart disease, but the heart he gave to his work continues to beat in every journalist and educator he inspired. He was a public educator in the truest sense, a man who transformed the television screen into a classroom for an entire nation. You know, sometimes a story comes up that reminds us why we must never forget the names of those who taught us how to see ourselves. He leaves behind a legacy of integrity, discipline, and an unforgettable commitment to the truth. We are a grateful generation for the time he spent holding the microphone for those who were unheard. His legacy continues to live on in every frame. Tributes to Tony Brown.